Chapter 7, The Union Field begins. Union Hall did not simply grow, it detonated. The platform itself handled it with eerie grace. Threads braided and unbraided themselves according to need. Voices found each other. Arguments formed and dissolved. Friendships sparked in the spaces where extremists failed to dominate. It wasn't a council chamber, it was a galaxy-sized cafe. A Kalor mathematician posted detailed analysis of the Union Field schematics and announced grudgingly that these humans have done their homework. A miner from a low-tech world asked if rusty scrap metal could substitute for one of the recommended alloys. A human engineer replied with 3 alternative designs. An artist from a water planet shared a sketch of how their people had decorated their first node frame with shells in bioluminescent algae. Someone observed dryly that if the purge was going to erase them, they might as well go out making something beautiful. No single government authorized the building of the first node. No policy was passed. No treaty was signed. A handful of electricians in a dusty settlement on an overlooked rock of a world simply decided. They had most of the parts. They had the schematic. They had nothing better to do after their shift. They built, and the galaxy watched. Within hours, a second node frame went up on a bustling capital world, then a third on a station that had never had reason to care about Sol, then a fourth cobbled together in a school courtyard by a teacher and her most stubborn students. Governments panicked. You cannot construct unknown devices without authorization. These structures must be registered. This is a violation of orbital zoning regulations. The people building paused just long enough to look at their governments. Then a universe-wide shrug rolled through the civilian threads of Union Hall, and they went back to work. On Vadris, in a crystalline valley where light refracted in 100 colors, Ina Tor stood with her hands on her hips and glared at the half-finished node rising from her village's central square. She was compact by her species standards, with faceted skin that caught the light in dull silver and hair like spun glass bound back in a strict coil. Age had not dulled her posture. She radiated the kind of energy that made younger people reflexively stand up straighter. "Stop hitting it," she snapped at a young worker who was trying to persuade a misaligned beam into place with increasingly aggressive hammering. "It is a node, not an enemy fortification." The worker froze. "Yes, Elder," he muttered. Ina clicked her tongue and checked the field measurements on her wristband. "Your alignment is off by 3/10, she said. "Also, you are leaking harmonics. Plug the leak and the alignment will fix itself." "You can see harmonics?" another worker asked, awed. "I can see mistakes," she said. "They are the same thing." Her pregnant daughter, Laurie, watched from a nearby bench, one hand resting on the slight swell of her abdomen. Children darted around her legs, chasing a hovering toy, an interactive light orb that squealed happily when tagged. "Careful of the frame," Ina called automatically as the children squeaked past the node's base. "Do not run into it. If you crack it, you fix it, and I will make sure you fix it properly." They squealed affirmations and kept playing. Ina sighed. Children. She made another adjustment to the node's crystalline coupling, watching the readout fields shimmer in response. The pattern settled, almost, but not quite, where it should be. She said. The children's game sent them once more under the unfinished structure. The orb dipped low, bounced off one child's forehead, and careened into Laurie's lap. She laughed, a sudden, delighted sound, and flicked it playfully back into the air. For a brief moment, every child and Laurie herself laughed together. The node brightened. Not much, barely a sliver, but Ina's eyes flicked to the readings and went wide. "No," she whispered. She stared at the data, then at the children, then at her daughter. "Do that again," she said. "Do what?" one of the children asked. "Laugh," Ina said impatiently. "Play, like you just did. And you," she pointed at Laurie, "laugh like that again." Laurie blinked. "Mother, you cannot just order." "Play," Ina snapped. Now! It was the now that did it. The children scrambled to obey, partly out of respect, mostly out of mischief. The orb zipped between them. Tiny hands stretched, grabbed, missed, tagged. Laurie couldn't help it. The sight of her niece tumbling into a heap of limbs and giggles dragged another laugh out of her. The node flared. This time the spike was undeniable. Ina's heart hammered. She did 3 more tests to be sure. Different children, different games. A quiet, peaceful moment where one child simply sat and hummed while drawing pictures. Each time the node responded. Joy, not motion, not sound. Not number of bodies present. Joy. She drew in a slow breath. Laurie, she said. Yes, Mother. Come put your hand on the frame. Laurie approached, frowning, and did as she was told. The node's resonance climbed even before Ina asked anything of her. Steady, powerful, stable. Not wild like the children's spikes. More like a deep, effortless current. Ina swallowed around the sudden tightness in her throat. Think about something that makes you happy, she said quietly. Laurie's gaze unfocused. Her hands shifted on the frame. The readout leaped. The nodes sang. Ina took a careful step back and braced a hand on a support beam. Oh, she said. It wasn't much of a scientific statement. It was all she had. Hours later, her report hit Union Hall. Other node builders read it, tried it, and reported the same thing. Children's joy amplified the field. Genuine art and music deepened it. Simple acts of everyday kindness steadied it. Pregnant women, standing near the nodes in peace and happiness, flooded them with astonishing, clean power. And every attempt to force it, every ordered gathering, every perform joy now for the greater good, crashed the readings into the dirt. Humans confirmed this, almost apologetically. Yes, one of their engineers wrote, we tried forcing it early on. It failed. The universe appears to be very particular about honesty. 3 days later, Ina Tor's life changed again. A box appeared on her workbench. It hadn't been there when she left for lunch. When she came back, it was sitting squarely in the center of her tools, about the size of her torso, made of a smooth, dark material that wasn't quite metal, wasn't quite stone. There was no courier, no seal, just a simple printed note. To Ina Tor, for seeing what we hoped was there. Union Hall, Saul. Ina stared at it. The workers stared at it. Laurie stared at it, one hand on her stomach. Open it, one of the teenagers whispered. Ina huffed, trying to gather her dignity, and unlatched the lid. Inside were neat rows of glossy, dark brown bars wrapped in simple, shimmering paper. A faint, rich scent rose up from them, unlike anything Vedras had ever known. What is that? Laurie asked. A weapon, one worker murmured. A bribe, another suggested. Ina picked one up, broke off a piece and tasted it. Her knees nearly gave out. The flavor exploded across her senses. Sweet, bitter, deep, warm. Her brain lit up. Every old memory that carried even a hint of pleasure resurfaced all at once. She made a noise that embarrassed her immensely and sat down hard on the bench. What is it? Laurie demanded. Ina thrust the remaining piece at her daughter with shaking fingers. Try it, she croaked. Laurie did. The sound she made was only slightly less dramatic than her mother's. Later, the translation filters on Union Hall would struggle to find a proper word for Vedras's new sacred substance. Humans helpfully provided one: chocolate. Within a week, half the village was experimenting with using tiny squares of chocolate as reward for long node-building shifts, a treat for musicians after a performance, a symbol for pregnant women coming to stand by the frame and talk about baby names. Ina Tor's node became famous, not just because it was efficient, because it was joyful.